I want to welcome everybody to the third week webinar where we do question and answers. And I'm so grateful to be here today because I actually learned so much in preparing for this particular topic we're talking about today, and that is self-gaslighting. I have recognized now that oftentimes betrayed partners participate in self-gaslighting. Last time we met, we talked about how the addict partner gaslights the betrayed partner. I also want to just add a note to that, and it is this, that, a betrayed partner can also gaslight an addict partner. And so it's really important that we recognize that. The other thing that it's important to recognize in a betrayed partner's healing journey is possibly the behaviors that you are gaslighting yourself. So today we're going to talk a bit about that. I do want to review a couple of very quick points on what we talked about the last time on gaslighting. Remember, gaslighting is a form of control and manipulation that is enacted upon someone to have them question their thoughts, their feelings, their reality, and even their sense of sanity. Now, when you're a betrayed partner, if you've experienced a lot of gaslighting, you can kind of automatically shift into self-gaslighting. It almost becomes a part of the recovery process if you're not aware of it. Most betrayed partners do not realize when they are self-gaslighting. That's why I think this topic is so important today, because I'm going to give you questions to consider. I'm going to give you phrases you say. I am going to give you the signs of how you can recognize if you're doing it, along with the steps to take to get out of it. So, a simple explanation of what self-gaslighting is. Self-gaslighting is when you simply deny or question your own experiences, your own feelings, your own emotions, and your reality. What happens oftentimes is there's so much questioning when I have betrayal trauma and my experiences that pretty soon, not only am I questioning the addict partner, I begin to question me as well. So there's a lot of questioning that's a part of this self-gaslighting. Yes.
Can you say that? Like, I was scribbling it down.
Yes.
I need it to sink in. Could you say that one more time so we can all just kind of process
Let's
through it?
sit with
Sorry.
that. Yes. So as a betrayed partner is experiencing her betrayal trauma and she's questioning, right, the addict partner, she's questioning her reality, she's requesting and questioning her sense of self, she then can generalize it and start self-gaslighting, that somehow I'm a part of it and somehow there's truth in this somewhere, and it's really distorted. I hope that explained it. If not, ask questions. I can circle back around. So what gaslighting looks like is that I might suppress my thoughts, I might suppress my emotions, and as a betrayed partner, I don't show up authentically because I fear that if I do, it could cause the end of the relationship. Or I use self-gaslighting as a protective measure. I kind of look at it like safety seeking. I'm going to self-gaslight to make sure everything is going to be okay with my addict partner, that we're going to be okay, because I want to prevent any kind of disconnection occurring in that moment in the relationship. So that's how I see it showing up in my office, oftentimes. So what does a betrayed partner's self-gaslighting look like? So I want you to ask yourself these simple questions, and then I want you to honestly see if you recognize yourself in any of them. So number one, and this is in a relationship with your addict partner, do I always assume it's me who got it wrong? So think about the times you sit down, you're having a discussion, and do you start to feel like, oh, maybe I'm looking at this the wrong way? Number two, do I apologize all the time to my addict partner when I don't need to? Now, yes, we do need to apologize when we make mistakes. We do need to take accountability. We do need to fix it. But in this case, you're constantly apologizing. Number three, is my self-talk negative, or do I verbalize out loud negative aspects about myself? Like I'm inadequate, I'm stupid, I'm dumb, I'll never get it right. That's another sign. Number two, Do I undercut my own abilities on a regular basis, or do I devalue my abilities? So am I constantly putting myself down? This can be an internal process. So it's in my thinking. I might put myself down with my addict partner. So I am not willing to look at what I can do because I'm so busy devaluing myself. Number 5, do I minimize my feelings and my experiences? Do I minimize my intuition? Do I minimize my feelings? Now, this is one that I see show up so much. This can be a coping mechanism that we learn from the time we're very, very young. We learn that sometimes things are so big and so hard, and the feelings are so intense that we sometimes have figured out, our brain does, and it's not the fault of anybody. This is kind of a function of the brain to help us manage the stress and the trauma. We learn to minimize and make things just not as bad as they actually are. Next question. Do I see my addict partner's recovery as being more important than my own? So do I tell myself that I'm okay and I don't need anyone's help, that I can get over it on my own? I see this one show up in my office. So these are the clients who will come in and tell me that, you know what, I'm just gonna, I've done disclosure. I don't need to do any more work. I'm fine. It's my husband that we need to focus on, or it's my wife who's got the addiction we need to focus on. So I'm just gonna let them do their work. I'm gonna tell you that is a form of gaslighting. And then the last question is, do I have stories in my head that play constantly in my mind when I'm in the relationship with my partner? So here's the stories. Are you ready? Maybe I'm bad. Maybe I'm making a big deal out of it. I might have a story about, I know my addict partner loves me and he doesn't mean it like that. So do I kind of minimize how I'm being treated? Do I have stories about how it's my fault that this happened? If I just would have done it this way, it would have gone better. Another one is, if I were a stronger person, if I had more recovery under my belt, I wouldn't feel this way. I wouldn't act this way. Another one is, my addict partner didn't believe me because I'm not worth believing. Somehow I'm not either verbalizing it like I should, or it's not valid. So we've got to look at that. Another one is, I should be over this by now, instead of having it impact every aspect of my life, right? Why am I not getting better? Why is this, I'm just not doing it right. I must not be doing recovery right. Another one is, I'm being too sensitive. I'm probably overreacting. Like I mentioned earlier, it's the client who comes in and says to me, I really am okay, even though they're in the midst of dysregulation and some really difficult situations that are happening with their addict partner. The other one I see is this. It's the woman who says, or the man who says, my betrayal story isn't as bad as some of the other people in my group. So why am I making it such a big deal? And I always go back to my famous saying, which is, the stories are different, but the pain is the same. So we minimize, again, our experiences. So asking yourself those questions, we're going to talk about those a little bit later. So I want you to keep those in mind. Now I want you to think about some of the signs that might indicate that you are self-gaslighting. So one of the signs is that I make excuses for my addict partner's bad behaviors. So I go into my logic and I try to figure out why my addict partner's doing that, and I minimize it. Like I might say, gosh, he really didn't mean it like that, or, oh, I'm just too sensitive, or, I know he's a good guy, and so, this is not how he really is. Telling yourself these things are a form of self-deception. So we have to look at reality. You invalidate your own feelings because you see the addict partner's feelings as being more important than your own. That's the next sign. So you tell yourself that you shouldn't feel a certain way. You downplay the emotions and feelings that you're having in the moment. And that's where the I'm just too sensitive comes in, or I should be over this by now. So I need to let it go. Okay, next sign. You're stuck in the past. So you constantly think about the would have, should have, or could have. So you often do this over and over again in your mind. You tell yourself you should have done it this way or that way, or I should have responded differently. If I had done it right, then my addict partner wouldn't have gotten angry. It would have gone better. I work with women all the time that they are so worried about what they've experienced in the past with their partner that they question their ability now that they're in a healthier space and they're learning about more healthy thinking, about boundaries. They still question, when something doesn't go right, that they should have or could have done it differently. So that is a form of gaslighting. Rather than saying, you know what, that didn't work, let me learn from it and let me kind of shift and change and see if I can do it a different way. Hey, we talked about this before and insinuated this. You think you're too sensitive. So, this is what it looks like. Something happens with your addict partner, and let's say you get angry as a betrayed partner. You have a right to get angry. And what may happen is as you're getting angry, then the addict partner might minimize what you're feeling, might minimize the event. They might get defensive and they start telling you that you're wrong. And so all of a sudden, you start thinking to yourself, gosh, maybe I am overreacting. This could be in the moment, this could be later. I then start to think to myself, maybe I am overreacting. Maybe I shouldn't have gone angry. I should just not get angry because it's just going to make recovery harder for my partner. And so we really think that we're too sensitive when at times we have a right to feel like we feel. The next sign is you always second guess and doubt yourself. So you feel like you can't trust your own decisions. You find yourself constantly thinking about how you should approach your addict partner, that you question constantly how to do it. You're so fearful that you're going to get it wrong that you start to second guess and doubt yourself. I see this happen with betrayed partners with their intuition. They might all of a sudden have these intuitive feelings and they get into their self-doubt and they're second guessing and they ignore it. At times they even say, you know what, this isn't that big of a deal. I'm just going to ignore the problem. So they can even go to the other extreme and choose not to face it because their doubt is so great. And you question your interactions with your addict partner on a constant basis, and you feel like you're always doing it wrong. That's doubting yourself. Okay. The other thing you can doubt, the next sign is you doubt your reality and your memories. So again, the dynamic we see is usually when you're having a troubling event with an addict partner, and later you may go back and share with the addict partner what your experience was, what your feelings were, only to have the addict partner get defensive. And they tell you a completely different story. And then all of a sudden you turn on yourself and you start to believe that it was your fault, that somehow you didn't remember it the right way, that the addict partner's way was correct because they told you how it happened. So you are constantly questioning on a consistent basis the reality of your situation. Okay, next sign. You minimize and convince yourself that things aren't that bad. So you downplay your experiences, the feelings and emotions you experience. You may feel like you don't have a right to speak up or tell your truth. You start to believe you're too sensitive, and you might even shut off emotions and deny you're even having them. This is part of that minimizing I talked about a little bit earlier. So I'm trying to make a really difficult situation seem like it's a lot easier to deal with than it actually is. Last sign. You always find a way to blame yourself or accept the blame. So this is usually combined with what we call that strong inner critic, that part in our mind that is constantly judging us, that tells us it's our fault as the betrayed partner, and that we are not capable and we're not perfect and we're not good enough. So when we have an interaction with the addict partner and it doesn't go well, we turn on ourselves and we begin to blame ourselves and make it our fault that it went wrong. We make it our fault as a betrayed partner that the addict partner treats us so poorly. And we make it our fault that the addict partner isn't doing their recovery, that something I need to be doing, it needs to be done differently so that this will happen. Many times I see betrayed partners go into that fawn response, which is that appease and please. So I apologize. I was wrong. I shouldn't have brought this up. I should be okay with this. And we try to make everything okay with the addict partner because we want to maintain that connection so badly. Okay, so how do we stop? I'm going to give you some real hands-on things to do. You're welcome to reach out to me. I can go deeper in some of these. There are a lot of questions in this webinar today. Feel free to email me or reach out to Tammy to get in contact with me, and I can shoot you a handout with some of these ideas on it. So step one, you've got to recognize that it's happening. So the first step with any of my clients is I've got to make them aware. They've got to recognize that there's a problem. So if I've got a client that's really stuck in a certain way of thinking or stuck in their recovery, sometimes I'll start to kind of go through some of the things we talked about, those signs, to see if that's what's happening. So one of the things you're going to want to do is take the time and go through all of those questions that I talked about earlier. And you might even want to look at those signs and go, do I do some of that? So this is where you've got to be very real with yourself, and you have to be very honest. If you have a hard time with being honest with yourself, then be vulnerable. Go in and see your therapist and ask your therapist, what do you notice about me? I find that I'm questioning that maybe I'm doing this, this, and this. Am I self-gaslighting? So have that conversation, get that feedback. Do you have a trusted friend, somebody who's very healthy? It could be even a group member who's well into their recovery. Go to them and ask them to be very truthful with you. Have them help you kind of be real with yourself and be honest. Step number two, you've got to get out of denial. So you have to come to terms with the fact that you've been self-gaslighting yourself. Just accept that you've been doing it. And the way you're going to work with your denial is you're going to look at the reality of your situation, which is really difficult. So the exercise you're going to want to use is the Identifying Your Reality exercise. This comes from Vicki Tidwell Palmer, and I'm going to go through it right now very briefly. So there's 3 simple steps to this. The first step is I'm going to identify the data. I love to have my clients journal this so we can put it on paper and see it. So the data is, if I were to record it with a video camera, what would I see? What would I hear? It is not my interpretation of what I'm seeing or hearing. So remember that. So what happened? What did I experience with my 5 senses? What did I see, hear, smell, taste, touch? Number 2, what do I think about the data? So what are the stories I go into, basically, which are perceptions about what happened? So check in with your stories. What do I start telling myself when I see this? And then thirdly, identify the emotions that you are experiencing as a result of the thoughts you're thinking. So you check in with yourself and you ask, what do I feel? What are my emotional responses to what I just experienced and to what I just perceived? So you're going to want to really tune in to those basic emotions, which are anger, fear, pain, love, passion, shame, joy, and guilt. And it's those negative emotions that if they're coming up, you need to recognize that, there's something going on here. And I need to look at the fact that I've got to focus on this and start doing some of my own work. Step 3, you're going to observe without judgment. So just acknowledge that you have gaslighting behaviors. And if you choose to gaslight yourself, do it with intention. Know that you're doing it. I tell my clients, you can do that. I'm okay with you do it as long as you do it with intention, meaning you're aware of it, you give yourself permission, and then you are going to step into something that I call the compassionate observer approach, which means I'm going to notice what's going on. So with a compassionate observer approach, this is where I step out of judgment of myself. I step out of judgment of the other person. So the analogy is, instead of being up on the stage, acting out and playing a role, maybe even in the drama triangle, I am choosing to step off the stage out of my role and sit in the audience and observe what's happening and not place any judgment on anything. So I'm looking at the facts. I'm connecting the dots. I'm using curiosity. Oh, look at that. Here's why this is how I feel when this happens. So as you're doing that, I want you to also ask yourself and check in without judgment and ask yourself, How is gaslighting serving me? And how is gaslighting helping me cope? And again, without judgment, you're going to ask yourself, why do I turn to gaslighting? Also, why does gaslighting no longer serve me here in the present? And why does gaslighting not serve me in the future? And then lastly, who would I be if I don't gaslight? So it's really important that you practice a lot of self-compassion if there's a lot of self-judgment. So you're going to want to get into doing your self-compassion exercises, self-compassion meditations. I love to have my clients also do, things like coming up with a self-compassion statement that they repeat and they use on a continual basis. Okay, so step number 4. You're going to revalidate or validate who you are, what you feel, and what you're experiencing. So you need to learn to do the following. You've got to identify what you're feeling, thinking, or experiencing in the moment, which means I have to be present and in my body, and I've got to kind of tune inward, and I've got to name what I'm experiencing. So I do that by I acknowledge that I'm having this emotion, or I'm noticing that this is the thought going through my mind. This is the story I'm telling myself. Or I'm noticing, oh, this is what I'm experiencing right now. What's going on here? Give yourself permission in that moment to feel it, to think it, and to experience it the way you are seeing it. Move into your body, and I want you to feel where that's at in your body. And then you're going to do a mindfulness exercise. So what I'll tell my clients to do is I'll tell them, I want you to go sit down, put your feet on the ground. I want you to think about the situation or the emotion. And I want you to notice, where do you feel that in your body? So notice where you feel that in your body. And I want you to begin to breathe. Breathe in, breathe into that area. I want you to imagine that you're breathing into it, that as you're exhaling, it's leaving your body. And while you're doing that, you're going to ask, okay, what is it here to help me with? And what do I need to learn from this? So, do I need to validate that my feelings are okay and that my feelings are just as valid as my addict partner's? Do I need to step out of my stories? Do I recognize, gosh, I'm in my stories a lot and I didn't even check in with my addict partner to see if the story's true? Do I minimize my experiences? So I need to learn from this. I need how to learn it differently. And then sit down and journal your truth. Okay. If you're not sure what it is, because I've had clients say to me, Debbie, I just don't know. What is the truth here? I don't know how to think, feel. I don't know how to see it. Again, get into a group, get into a qualified therapist, have somebody who's there, who's really good at assisting you with this, because sometimes we're in such trauma, and this is higher level work. This is not work you're going to be doing during the early days of betrayal trauma when you're just trying to stabilize and regulate your emotions. This is when we're finally working on that road to recovery. And we're now getting into that part where instead of focusing on the addict partner, now as the betrayed partner, I'm starting to focus on me and my recovery. So it's really important that you start to go inward and focus on what the experiences are that you're having. Step 5, you're going to practice affirmations to redirect all those crazy stories in your head. So you've got to recognize your negative thought patterns that are around minimizing, they're self-defeating, they're self-critical of both you, even the addict partner. And then you're going to reframe those negative thoughts into something positive. And then you're going to repeat that affirmation every time the negative thought comes up. We call this thought stopping. We call this reframing. And so I'm going to give you some examples of what that would be. So if I'm telling myself, I am just crazy, or I am just too sensitive, the affirmation for that is my feelings and my emotions are valid. Then I sit in it and allow myself to feel it. Where's it at in my body? Why are you here? What do you want me to know? How you're trying to help me? Okay. Maybe it's all in my head. Maybe I'm not really seeing this the right way. Becomes my experiences are real and valid. You can kind of see there's a pattern there. We use valid. Okay. It's all my fault becomes nothing is all my fault. Just because someone places the blame on me doesn't make it true. That last part is really important for a betrayed partner to remember. So you have to be very consistent in rewriting the negative script that's going on in your head. And you've got to always shift it to a positive. Now, I have clients come in and they say to me, yeah, but Debbie, that's not true. And I say, I get it. It doesn't feel true to you right now. Someday it will. So you're going to fake it till you make it, because we've got to teach your brain to create new neural pathways. Right now, it wants to go down this way. The nerves want to fire and take you here in your brain. We're wanting the brain to take you here in your brain. So we've got to do it repetitively. Okay, step 6. You have to focus on self-awareness. I talked about that a little bit in the very first step when we talked about being honest with yourself, but now we need to go a little bit deeper. So, journaling again is one of the best ways for you to really dig deep and figure out what's going on. So, I would go back to some of those questions that I had earlier and start journaling on them. I might go through the signs and ask myself, do I do this? Is this my experience? And journal on that. Another way to do it is just to free write. I call this journal dumping. So I know things are going on. I'm trying to be aware of what's happening. I'm so confused. Just start writing. Whatever comes out without judgment, just let the thoughts flow, let them go onto the paper. Don't worry about how you write it. Don't worry about, grammar. Don't judge it and say, gosh, I shouldn't be feeling this or seeing it this way. Just write it and put it away. And then you're going to go back later and try to see what you gained from that experience. You're going to see it differently. So when I step out of that experience, and it might be you don't go back and look at it for a long period of time. And then all of a sudden you're going to see, man, I've come so far. I'm no longer doing that kind of gaslighting. I'm very aware now of I was doing this and it wasn't helping me in my recovery. You've got to also practice mindfulness. That's a really important part of it as well. You've got to constantly be aware, like I said, of being in your body. And that leads to step 7, which is you've got to ground yourself. So this is a lot about mindfulness, being in your body. So one of the best ways to do is to ground yourself so that you can realize what your reality actually is. Because oftentimes as a betrayed partner, I am in the past, I am in the future, and I've got to get back in my body in the here and now. And that's all I have the ability to control and manage. So put together your mindfulness playlist, whether it's a meditation that's of self-compassion, like we talked about. Maybe it's a meditation of getting back into your body. I love the practice of gratitude. I find that when I'm in my crazy stories and I'm gaslighting myself, one of the quickest ways to get out of those negative stories and reframe it is to go into gratitude, to look around and maybe recognize what you are doing right, or maybe recognizing, being grateful for the support you have, for how far you've come, for the resources that you can easily turn to, just for the little things in life, whether it's family, friends, experiences, and even activities. So gratitude is a really great way to ground yourself. That really helps a lot of my clients who've become dysregulated and becoming more regulated in the here and now. Then you've got to learn to practice surrendering. Realize that you can't change what happened, but you can change how you let it shape you. How it shapes your future, how it is shaping your present moment. So I'm going to have to surrender those stories I'm telling myself that are gaslighting stories. I have to step out of that thinking, and it has to be a constant choice that I'm doing, on a continual basis. And then the last step, which is very simple and very easy, is you've got to make this part of your recovery and part of your self-care plan. So I believe that at some point in recovery, every betrayed partner gaslights themselves in some way. So be aware of that. And oftentimes it's because I've had that gaslighting experience with my addict partner and I'm starting to believe that messaging. So even if it's just that, recognize that it is a part of that. And so do the self-compassion, do the mindfulness, do the journaling like I talked about. That's how we implement it and put it into your day-to-day recovery. So I want to just give you a couple of final thoughts, and that is this. Gaslighting yourself as a betrayed partner is just as harmful as the addict partner gaslighting you. That's really important. And I want to give you hope that you can rewrite this, you can change this, you can do this differently, even though it's maybe been a part of your life for a really long time. Maybe as you've been in a relationship with your addict partner, there's so much self doubt, there's so much minimization. You can change. So, my hope is that this information I've shared today is going to assist you in becoming more self aware about your own gaslighting and what you can do to move forward in your healing journey. So, that's what I have on self gaslighting. Oftentimes we don't realize that it is actually a part of betrayal experience, the betrayal experience.
Well, it's so interesting because when you were talking, like, I think I get lots of emails and like I'm going, oh, I mean, like those phrases that come up in these emails of I'm doing it wrong, or, you know, I'm fearful of, what's going to happen to his recovery, et cetera. Like all of those, things are part. Sorry, I lost an earbud and then anyway, so but it's all part of that messaging, and I was thinking even with that, when you said gaslighting yourself is as harmful as having the addict partner do it, but I like there are family systems, like for example, I hear, well, his parents also blame me, so it isn't
Mhm.
just the addict, it can be a bigger audience, that are reinforcing is, there's something wrong with you. I love that you're talking about, journaling, because I do think journaling and not editing, like the just writing and whatever comes out, making it, I'm going to write whatever comes out is okay. That's what I need to write, because I know it's really easy to go, well, I want to be very careful. I want to be polite. I want to be, whatever it is. And it just needs to be, the dump, whether it's answering a question or just the free form. But I have my feet bare and on the ground right now. I find barefoot on the ground is grounding for me. Like I do that intentionally. A lot of all of this intention. You were talking about a mindfulness playlist. This is so funny because Eddie Caparucci on Wednesday. There's two things that you said that layer onto what he said too. He sent me a mindfulness playlist that he's created because like, and so have it's a jumping off place, and you can email me, Tammy, TAMI at seekingintegrity.com. If you want it, I'll forward it to you, but you can create your own. But I was like, wow, like seriously, twice this week. And then the other thing is you can't make something not happen. He read, there was a quote from Gabor Mate, and it basically was, you can't, the stuff happened to you. You can't make it unhappen. And how do you move forward? So that really is the surrender to the past, but not giving up in the present and the future. And all of these things are designed to help us move forward in a different way. But I had not thought about gaslighting as self-gaslighting, but I can just see it interwoven in so much. One of the things you said about emotions, like identifying the feelings you're feeling, and I wondered, how often do you experience partners who can't, like they're so caught, I don't even know the right word, but like that they, like you say, what feelings are you feeling? And they're shut down or disconnected
Mhm.
from them. So how often is it just a challenge to identify I'm angry, or whatever, if they're doing the logic of like, I get this all the time too, well, he was sexually abused, he was traumatized, he was whatever, and so therefore it's almost like I can't have negative feelings because all of that hurt that he experienced, but I'm like, but he betrayed you. So there are real feelings. How often do you see people having difficulty getting in touch with that?
Well, I see it a couple of ways. One of them, like you said, is I kind of deny my emotions. So I don't allow myself to go there because my addict partner's struggling so much with their own and,
Mm,
their past traumas. And so I work with clients at that point on kind of figuring out, where did you come up with that thinking that,
mm,
that their emotions are more important than yours. And
mhm,
and typically we can kind of, go back to where that originated. What are the stories you have around that? How can we reframe it? right? How can we reframe it and look at it, in a healthier way regarding your partner's recovery and their experiences? And so that's one of the ways I do it. Now, one of the analogies I use with my clients is I want them to think about life being like a journey. And maybe this is a journey that for some of us, if we have a higher power, maybe we made a contract that, hey, I'm going to go and I'm going to learn this and I'm going to have these experiences. But I just want you to think that everybody's got their own distinct journey. And so we have to allow people to be on their path and on their journey, because that's where they learn and they grow, they make mistakes, and that's how we move forward in life. If everything was pleasant on our journey, we would not evolve and become bigger than what we are.
Hmm.
So oftentimes what we have to do is we have to say, it's unfortunate that my addict partner had those experiences on his journey. I didn't have them. And I am here to help my addict partner, but I've got to be on my journey. I still have to work on
Hmm.
my things.
Hmm.
And periodically, I can go over and I can give encouragement to you and cheer you on as you're walking in your journey. So sometimes I try to separate it that way, if that makes sense. So we
Hmm.
can kind of see it as there's two different processes going on there. Now, if they're not feeling anything at all,
Hmm.
what I try to do is I try to see if we can somehow use their imagination and go into their
Hmm.
body. And so for me, I might say, I might even question, well, you know what? If I was in that situation, I would be really angry. I'm just wondering why you just don't feel angry. You don't feel, anything, and a lot of times they'll say to me, I'm just shut down. So that might be what they tell me
Mm.
the feeling is. So what I will do is I will go, okay, so where's that shut down feeling in your body? So I do a lot of somatic awareness. I do some things with, let's give it a color, a shape, let's figure out what it's
Mm.
there for. And then once I've got a script I use, they usually can get to the emotion, right? It's fear. It's because if I let go of this, then
Mm.
things are going to go bad. And so I'm afraid. And so that's one of the way. For some people, I'm going to have to work with them for a while to get connected to their body and their feelings. And so, we talk about that because a lot of people growing up, my thought I had was, we're not allowed to have emotions. We're not allowed to have certain emotions. And so we have to do a little bit of psychoeducation of it's okay to feel emotions. And they may not even know how to label and identify emotions. So we have to learn about that as well. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that was, and even that some of them recognize that they're shut down.
Mhm.
Like that's interesting. But yeah, I mean, there are certain emotions that there can be gender bias on those. Where men
Mhm.
aren't supposed to feel emotions, they can be
Mhm.
angry, and women aren't supposed to be angry. So like all of that, really impairs people's ability to feel the range of emotions. But you're right. The journey, we grow through that. But also, if I don't experience any negative emotions, I can't experience joy either, because like there's no point of reference. Then it's the numbing out and staying kind of in the middle, and
Mhm.
feeling nothing, which is a safety thing. I get it, on both
Yeah.
sides of the
Oh, yeah.
equation. It's a safety thing, but you miss out on the the
Mhm.
real joy and deep meaning of things
Mhm.
too. So interesting. Yeah, like even the undercutting my ability to to own my or to to believe in myself, that I'm apologizing all the time for, I must have done it wrong, all of those things. And I do, like, it's interesting. I'm going to pay more attention, when I'm reading things, and thinking about it as to that, because I've not looked at gaslighting of self before, but it
Mhm.
makes
Mhm.
tons of sense. So,
Mhm.
okay, we have a question, and now we've got two. That's great. Okay, so the first one, Debbie, is in the Prodependence book. Weiss mentions not to use the detaching with love strategy, but to stay involved and caring and supportive and empathetic. It seems like a fine line between doing that and trauma bonding enabling. What is the difference when walking that line, and what is the best way to keep boundaries and take care of yourself while still retaining empathy and participating, encouraging recovery?
So many layers to this. I
Yeah,
mean,
I was gonna say that's a complicated
oh,
one.
it is. You're right. Rob does say that. And I do have clients come in and say, well, I just need to detach. I'm going to do it with love. I'm going to be kind. Well, now we've created disconnection even more. Remember, the goal of recovery is we want to repair the attachment, along with repairing the individuals who have experienced the trauma or the addiction. And so you're right. We need to somehow, how do I maintain connection? Even though it's really difficult, because as a betrayed partner, I really do want to show my addict partner I care. I want to show them that I'm supportive, I'm empathetic. So, what if that addict partner is really hard and they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing? And every time you go in to try something, you're having a trauma response. And so now your brain says you just need to detach with love, kind of an experience. So, I want you to think about shifting it and changing it. And you're right. If I keep going back in and I have these really bad experiences, right? And then I step back out of it, and then all of a sudden things get better and I move back towards you and it's, all of a sudden really bad and blows up. And I am got that trauma bonding going on. So you're right. Boundaries are the way out of it. So we're going to reframe it and look at it a little bit differently. So one of the ways we're going to look at it is like I told you, we're walking different paths. So you've got to remember that, and that maybe your addict partner is struggling and maybe they've got to learn something. And so there might be a time where you not need to kind of step out and support yourself and care for yourself and have empathy for yourself a little more. And that would be self care. That would be setting the boundary that if, I start to want to detach from my partner because they're not doing the recovery the way they need to, then what is it that I need? What is the fear or what is the story I'm telling myself? And so, what do I need? Do I need more support? Do I need to let this go for now, but turn to somebody else to talk it through because I can't talk it through with my partner? So, we do have to kind of focus on that. With that boundary, there are times when your addict partner isn't doing what they need to do to make you feel safe. So I think is safety is how I would look at it. If a partner's not safe, then I need to go create safety. I may need to separate myself from them. I didn't say detach, I said separate and create space. But you got to do it with words because words are so important. Otherwise, it feels like you're detaching and you think I'm detaching with love, and your partner sees that as abandonment. So you need to let them know here's my boundary. And it can be even the moment they might be doing something and in your head you're going, I'm out of here, this relationship's over, I'm done. And then you leave the house and or you just get quiet and just agree and you go in the other room and you get silent. You can't do that. Instead you reframe it to, what do I need to do in this moment right now to feel safe, to take care of myself and to support myself? Okay. And then you need to figure out what it is you're going to do. Then, as you're going to be doing that, let's say your partner's broken a boundary, he's not safe or she's not safe, then you're going to let them know, I'm just going to step away because I need to do some self care in this moment. I even tell my clients when you do the timeouts, to put words with it like, not only do we need to pause, but I want you to know I want to get this fixed with you. I do care about you, but I need time. I need some time away. And it's okay. I have clients sometimes when their partners cross some really big bottom lines, it's not the big bottom line, but they're pretty significant. Sometimes they need 2 or 3 days away from the addict partner just so they can get regulated and they can figure out what they need for self-care and they can, get the support they need. It's okay to do that. But we want to let the partners need to let each other know what it is they're doing. So that's kind of how I see detaching with love kind of showing up. A lot of times my partners will say, well, I didn't get mad, I didn't say bad words, I just quit talking, and they think that is detaching with love. Also, detaching with love is a codependence approach. And remember, with the prodependence approach, it's all about attachment. And it's all about looking at everything through the lenses. What I'm trying to do and the behaviors I'm doing is because I'm fearing the disconnection, or I'm having trauma because there was the disconnection, that disruption to the relationship due to the addiction and the trauma that is resulting from that. So those are some of my thoughts I have on that. Again, take care of yourself and put your oxygen mask on first before you put on your addict partners. So yes, you can be mad at your addict partner, so have empathy. It's okay, you know, but you can still participate in their recovery and encourage them. But there's going to be times where create some space, step away, take care of you.
I really appreciate that clarification on separation rather than detachment. And I do hear, addicts or partners talking about the addicts is, he always, and we use genders here, it's just for ease, but it's like he, thinks he feels like I'm abandoning him if I, do that. So using the words of like, I need to take care of myself. I'm going to do some self-care. I'll be back. Like those type of things, can help, with the attachment and not have and not that any betrayed partner is responsible for what the addict chooses to do, but doing things that help each of you on the path, is a good thing. So
Mhm, mhm.
okay, Debbie, the next one. My addict partner has empathy for everyone else, but not for me as a betrayed partner. He says he doesn't know why. This is hurtful. Do you have some suggestions on how to deal with this? 6 months after formal therapeutic disclosure, still denial going on and blaming me.
Well, just by first glance, I would say, I don't know your addict partner. And um, here's where my brain would go if I was dealing with a client who came in sharing with me what you did. Um, I would I would wonder if the addict partner is really doing their recovery. So, again, it's really hard. You're walking a fine line as the betrayed partner. You can't go in and tell them what they need to do. But the fact that he has empathy for everybody else and not for you, the betrayed partner, there's a reason why. What's the block? Is it that they are not willing to get out of denial and they're not willing to stop blaming you? Because if they do, then they've got to feel certain really hard, difficult emotions. Are they working like they need to work with their therapist? Are they getting to the bottom of their shame? Are they recognizing their denial behaviors? Are they trying to connect the dots as to why I have empathy for everybody else, but not for my betrayed partner? So here's an interesting thought that I'm going to throw out there. Doesn't mean it's always true. But one of the things I see is that someone who has an addiction, and even while they're in recovery for the addiction in the early days, unless they're well into recovery, they have a lot of narcissistic type behaviors. So when I'm in those kind of behaviors, it is easy for me to have more empathy for other people than it is for my partner, because my partner easily triggers me. My partner, is I'm kind of, like I said, they're putting a lot of blame on them. And so it's very difficult for me to have empathy for somebody that I am making the reason that I'm struggling. So your addict partner's got to work on that too. So with that information, what would you do with it? How would you move forward with it? Because that's a hard thing to do. And I don't know, with your addict partner, does he have moments where he's open and receptive? Could you start doing regular check-ins if you're not
Mm,
doing them? One of the check-ins I really like is the couples check-in that Gottman does, because it starts out with, we share appreciations, we share gratitude. We then go in and we look at what didn't go right in the relationship. We talk about what's a need that you have this coming week that you could meet for me. Here's a need I have that you can meet. And in that exercise, we're also starting to learn to kind of recognize, I think we're start to do some behaviors that will help develop empathy, because empathy is a learned skill. For whatever reason, with your addict partner, there is a block there. And so he's got to do some deeper work to figure that out. Like I said, sometimes I question, okay, how well are they doing their recovery? Are they really committed? Are they just seeing their therapist once a month? Are they going to group, maybe twice out of the 4 times they should every month? Is their therapist, they just go in and chit chat, or does he go in and really get deep? And it's really hard, the work that he's doing. So I feel badly that you're still getting blamed and you're not experiencing that empathy. So reach out to those support people in your network and let them give you the empathy that you need. Hopefully you're in a very empathetic relationship with your therapist so that you are getting it from somewhere.
Well, and I was thinking about what you just said about the last question too, Debbie, about separation. Like, this could be a time when, you do some separation, physical or whatever, to take care of you. It is really challenging. If there's any glimmers of like, oh, that was a tiny, tiny shred of empathy for me. If there's any opportunity to go, that was really helpful, like anything you can do to if you see them being empathetic for other people, say that was that that's really nice. I would enjoy that as well, or like I don't know, I mean it's really challenging, but my biggest point is take care of you. Again, he seems kind of stuck, so what do you need to do to take care of you so that you're getting the support from therapists, from other betrayed partners. Just go have coffee with a girlfriend. Like sometimes I
Yeah.
go like, just like mind off of those issues, go do something, that is away from addiction and recovery and betrayal and all of those things, just a break, so.
Well, I like what you've said about the separateness. Sometimes when I see this happening and we're really stuck, and in that being stuck, I see the betrayed partner really dysregulated. They just can't get into their own recovery. I will recommend what we call a therapeutic separation. Now, this is meant we put it in place for healing. And so this is something that you sit down with a therapist and you literally structure. So there's a guideline, there's rules, that we both agree to. We identify the work we're going to be doing while we're apart. We talk about everything from how the finances will be handled, what time we're going to spend together as a couple, what time we're going to spend together as a family. If we have children, these are the rules and how we manage the children so that we have their best interest. And so it's pretty complicated. There is a beginning date, there's an end date. And the purpose is that I am separating for a while so I can do self-care and I can do recovery and I can really get deeper into my own work. And then when I come back together, then we're in a much better, healthier place. So that's kind of what you were
Well,
trying.
and I like that you say a time frame, and I think it's a time frame to check on things too, because
Yes.
it isn't that the addict magically goes 90 days and then now I get to be all together. Like like there has to be
Mhm.
like this is what I'm looking for, for the safety. But I mean, I hear people that are separated for years, and you go, what is the plan? And there's really no plan. We're just separated, and I'm like, then you're literally just disconnected and separated. Yeah, and that feels like the worst place to be, because you're not either moving away from each other on a different path, or moving back together. You're just kind of in the in between. So getting a plan, having like a formal a therapeutic separation, whether it's in-house or out of house, is complex enough
Mhm.
that like formal therapeutic disclosure, I think it's not a great do it yourself project. Getting input from people who can really guide the process. You want to have good results. You're looking to do something different and better, so getting the help that you need to do that makes sense. So okay, next question. How do I stay sane while I'm waiting for therapeutic disclosure? It feels like I'm prepping for the ground to fall out from under me. Oh.
You are right. It does feel that way. I think this is one of the biggest struggles that a betrayed partner has after we get through stabilization and getting those trauma responses to calm down. And that is, I need to know. I just need to know everything. I can't feel settled unless I know everything. And like I said in the past, it's unfortunate, though, that we can't go in and we can't do a therapeutic disclosure until we have the betrayed partner to a certain point where they're stabilized, they're out of crisis, and they've got some skills and some tools to help them with that. That is really, really important. Um, Oftentimes what happens is in that time frame between, okay, everything's come out or I've discovered it, and now I'm waiting for a therapeutic disclosure over here, we're trying to stabilize, and you've got an addict partner who might still be doing the staggered disclosures, or you might be doing the interrogation disclosures, or they might dump a disclosure on you. And so you're so dysregulated that you feel like, I just want to get it done. I want to know what I'm dealing with so I can figure out how I'm going to move on in my life. So when I get clarity from my clients on that, moving on with my life means, am I going to stay in this relationship, or am I going to work on rebuilding trust? And this area is really hard. I teach my clients about the concept of living in the gray. And
Mm-hmm.
we want life to be black and white. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I want disclosure now. And if I don't get it now, then I'm not going to be able to heal. That's black and white. The gray is, I know I'm going to have disclosure. I recognize that there's a need to do some preparation. It will happen. So it's okay for me not to make any decisions right now. Just focus on me and we'll get to therapeutic disclosure. So I find that it typically takes, depending on how regulated the client is, at least 3 months, 2 to 3 months, because there's a lot of preparation for disclosure. So I'm hoping, and in the meantime, while you're waiting, you could start some of this preparation. And one of the things is you could start journaling. What are the questions you have? There is a format that, as a CSAT or certified sex addiction therapist, we follow. We are trained to do it a certain way because we want the outcome to be a positive outcome. It's going to be difficult, but we want it to create the ability to start to rebuild trust. So there's a framework. Number one, I tell my clients, you've got to start doing self-care. You've got to have self-care plans. So you've got to put together a self-care plan for the weeks leading up to disclosure, the week of disclosure, the day of disclosure, the minute you walk out of, while you're in disclosure, I tell my clients, and as you walk out the door from disclosure moving forward. There has to be specific things you're going to do. So start identifying that. The next thing you can do is you can set a boundary that there's going to be no more questions about things, asking of information. Put a boundary on the addict partner that they're not to share anything, that they just can put it in their narrative that they are writing about, for the disclosure. So even from the very beginning, that is a healthy boundary. I know the brain wants to know everything. It's trying to put together the pieces of the puzzles. And you are so dysregulated, and our brain says, well, if I just know everything, if I can just figure it out, then I'll be okay. But that's just the brain telling a story. It's not the actual truth and reality. Yes, at some point you'll be okay once you know everything, but in that moment, it's not necessarily so. The other thing you can do is you can start writing down your own list of questions that you have. So during the therapeutic disclosure, the betrayed partner is allowed to ask questions. So I work a lot with my clients on this. We'll spend a couple of sessions, not the entire session, but a part of the session really working on the questions, because we need to ask the right types of questions. And so we ask, why do I need to know this? Now, some of this will automatically be included in their narrative because the addict partner has a framework. They know there's certain topics, certain things and parts of information they need to share. So I tell my clients, make categories. Maybe you need to know things like, some of the history. Now, some history is appropriate to share, some is not. So you work with that with your therapist, but maybe it's the history of when we started dating. Now, an addict does share early on childhood history, at least in the ones that I've been in. So this is how I got on into the pornography. Here's how I got into the sex addiction. That's that purpose. But they will share even previously, the history of, our relationship. Here's how it's historically looked like. They will share if they've got pornography and the details of that. So you might have questions around pornography. So write those down. It could be, what type are you using? When you're at your worst, how often, how long have you gone without? It's probably going to already be in the narrative. Okay. Another area might be devices, might be locations. It might be additional behaviors, you sexting, sent pictures, those types of things. So start thinking about all those questions that are ruminating in your mind all the time. Put them on paper. It makes a real big difference to get it out of your head. So now you're preparing yourself for therapeutic disclosure, and you're feeling like you're doing something to move towards disclosure. I believe that I've done a past webinar on therapeutic disclosure, so it'll go into a lot more detail on that, and it will help you understand, how you can manage and stay regulated in the here and now until you get to that point.
And yes, I just talked to somebody earlier today, and they were like, I need to know. And I'm like, what is it you're really looking for? It's always safety. And,
Mhm.
but it's like, if the goal of formal therapeutic disclosure is to set a foundation for moving forward,
Mhm.
wouldn't the goal be that we do this right and that we get this set so that we have that foundation on which to move forward? You can't unhear gory details. So when people are picking, and I'm not blaming, I get it all, but when it's like, I need to know, I'm asking all these questions. I hear all the time from addicts, well, she asked, and I'm like, but you telling her now she can't unhear that. She can't get the vision out of her, head,
Mhm.
so waiting and doing it with proper help makes all the difference. It changes, the outcome. You don't want to do this again, and you don't want to do it poorly in that you don't get the information, in a format that's going to be useful for him to share and you to get. So.
Yeah. And I tell my betrayed partners, if you want to know something, you want to go in and you're trying to ask for information, write it down in your journal, include it in your questions. Yes, that's going to be a really hard boundary to hold into place, that internal boundary of I'm not going to ask. But it's really important that you do that. I sometimes have to do a lot of extra assistance, a lot of processing, disclosures that go wrong
Mhm.
even in a
Mhm.
therapist's office. So it's
Mhm.
really important that you just wait that period, do the
Mhm.
preparation. Like you said, the outcome
Mhm.
will be vastly different.
Yeah. 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 So thank you so much. It was great to see. Thanks for all the great questions, everyone, too. This will be posted on the website. And if you want that playlist, I see somebody popped an email to me about that. I will send that to you. But it was Eddie Caparucci's, but it was a mindfulness playlist, and it could be useful to start with. And Matt Wheeler will be on next week with Scott because I'm traveling, but I'll look forward to seeing you again. Um, let's see, it'll be into October already then. Oh, goodness. Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.